You are walking now along the dusty, sun-warmed trails of ancient Korea, your sleeves fluttering in the spring wind as you pass cherry trees in full bloom. The laughter of scholars floats through the air, soft, respectful, full of restraint. This is the Goryeo dynasty, and tonight, you're meeting a man who wore the crown reluctantly and then gave it up like an uncomfortable hat, King Huizong. Now, Huizong isn't a household name. He's not the type who gets epic TV dramas or marble statues. But that's the whole point. He ruled in the mid-1100s. And his story drifts along the edges of official history like ink spilled on silk, blurry, quiet, oddly graceful. Picture a young man trained in calligraphy and Confucian classics, suddenly thrust onto the throne like someone being handed the lead role in a play he never auditioned for. You can almost hear his inner monologue. Do I really have to manage taxes and armies? I was just trying to study tea ceremonies. Still, he tried. And he wasn't terrible at it, at first. But he was awkward with generals, overly fond of court rituals, and occasionally drifted into long philosophical rants during council meetings. One chronicler joked that his reign felt more like a seminar than a strategy session. Now, here's where things get foggy. Historians still argue whether Huizong stepped down willingly or was nudged out by a fed-up military elite. Either way, the court grew tired of his intellectual meandering and polite indecision. After a dramatic palace coup, Huizong was exiled, an emperor turned retiree. But what's fascinating is how he adapted. He didn't try to retake the throne. He didn't brood or plot revenge. Instead, he leaned into the peace. He took up brush painting, Buddhist meditation, and long walks in temple courtyards. According to one fringe legend, maybe true, maybe just bedtime gossip, he began planting ginkgo trees and naming them after the ministers who had betrayed him. Petty? Maybe. Peaceful? Absolutely. His letters from exile, only a few remain, speak in riddles and gentle irony. One fragment reads, "The mountain watches but does not speak. In this way, it rules better than I ever did." It's the kind of wisdom that sounds simple at first, then loops back to haunt your thoughts. Like, why don't more people rule like mountains? As you follow Huizong through a quiet monastery garden, the path crunches under your feet, and a sleepy cat rolls onto its back near the incense stand. A distant gong sounds for evening prayer, and the former king doesn't flinch, he just bows slightly, hands tucked into his sleeves, and continues walking. In this second life, no one bows to him, and that's exactly how he likes it. One curious tidbit? There's a surviving account that claims Huizong spent his final years designing what might have been the world's most boring, but oddly charming, board game. Something to do with stone placement and weather cycles. Historians call it unplayable. We call it vintage emperor vibes. It's hard not to admire the way he eased into stillness. Unlike some deposed rulers who clung to glory like damp laundry, Huizong accepted the quiet like a warm blanket. No rage. No proclamations. Just soft steps, quiet thoughts, and an entire lifetime to figure out who he was without the crown. You glance over, and he's feeding koi in a pond, whispering a verse about moonlight. The fish don't care he used to be king. Honestly, neither do you. You are now deep in a pine forest, where the wind smells of resin and the moss is thick like velvet underfoot. The silence here is not empty, it hums, the way a temple hums when no one speaks. But everyone listens. A few birds chirp half-heartedly, like they're unsure if they should interrupt. You've crossed the sea, and now you're following the quiet footsteps of Japan's Emperor Shmu. He ruled in the 700s, during the Noro period, and if you'd asked him early on what he wanted to be remembered for, he might have said, "I'd like to build something beautiful that helps people suffer less." A strange ambition for a ruler, but then again, Shmu was no ordinary emperor. Let's set the scene. You're in ancient Japan, where the imperial court is both glittering and precarious. There are earthquakes, droughts, smallpox outbreaks, and the occasional assassination rumor floating around the tea bowls. In the middle of it all, Shmu, A ruler who believed, genuinely, earnestly, perhaps even naively, that Buddhism could heal not just individuals, but entire nations. He poured resources into temples, art, and Buddhist relics like a man obsessed. Some say he was trying to quiet his own fear of mortality. Others claim he truly believed enlightenment was a team sport, and Japan needed more candles, statues, and incense. Either way, his most famous project was the Tdaig temple and its colossal bronze Great Buddha. Imagine molten metal poured by monks, the clang of hammers echoing across rooftops, and priests murmuring chants as scaffolding creaked in the sun. It's said that when the statue's eyes were painted in, birds landed on the brush as if to bless the moment. And then, the twist, in the middle of this architectural devotion fest, Shmu decides he's done ruling. Just like that. No civil war. No scandal. He simply steps down and becomes the first Japanese emperor to become a Buddhist monk. Historians still argue whether his abdication was a spiritual act or political theater. Some suspect he was nudged toward the monastery by courtiers fed up with his divine budget problems. Others think he just genuinely wanted to chant in peace. Either way, he gave the throne to his daughter and slipped into the robes of a monk like someone shedding too tight shoes. There's something gently revolutionary about that, an emperor choosing silence over speeches, a meditation mat over a war council. One quirky detail? Shmu didn't entirely vanish. He continued funding temple construction and occasionally popped up at ceremonies, like a dad who technically retired but still shows up at the office on Tuesdays to water his plants. And while his contemporaries may have side-eyed him for retreating into spiritual life during uncertain times, later generations viewed him as a pioneer, Japan's first royal who saw abdication not as defeat, but as transformation. You can almost hear the gravel crunching as he walks barefoot toward the great Buddha, robes rustling, his thoughts probably something like, "This is better than taxes." One monk later wrote that Shmu's presence in the temple was so calm that even the wind in the bamboo softened when he passed. A quiet king. A ruler who chose to disappear. And in doing so, maybe became more powerful than ever.